In the lead up to Easter, which has been over the last previous seven Sundays, here in Canning Vale, at our 10 a.m. service, we've been reflecting on this collection of blessings called the Beatitudes that Jesus talked about at the beginning of his most famous speech, which we know as the Sermon on the Mount. And this sermon, this talk, is about God's perspective on things. It's about how God wants heaven on earth. He wants his kingdom. God desires for his kingdom, the kingdom of heaven, to be established around us and to be established in us. And so Jesus starts this Sermon on the Mount, this famous talk, with these blessings known as the Beatitudes. Excuse me 1 second. Known as the Beatitudes, some of which are a bit surprising, right? So I'm going to put them on the screen, this list of Beatitudes that we've covered so far. Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek and those who mourn. So it's not necessarily, and in fact, it's not those who have got their lives all together that God's impressed with. God comes to the broken. He comes to the struggling, the humble in heart. He comes to the dissatisfied. It says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful, blessed are the pure in heart, the peacemakers, those who align themselves with the loving and forgiving and healing heart of God. So we've reflected on these over the last 7 weeks here in Canning Vale, but we've saved the best for last. Easter Sunday, day of resurrection and joy and celebration. So are you ready for Beatitude number 8? Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Happy Easter. Now, maybe you're wondering, look, why didn't I just leave this until next Sunday when the celebration's over and everyone's away for the long weekend? I mean, these are difficult words, no doubt about it. Very difficult words, challenging words. But I think these words carry within them the good news about Jesus in a unique way, and in fact, in a very powerful way. And I want to take a few minutes this morning just to explain why I think that. This weekend, Christians around the world, some 2 billion Christians, people estimate, gather to celebrate the most significant, historically documented events in history, the death and resurrection of Jesus, or certainly some of the most significant. But of course, many of those who lived at the time of Jesus and witnessed these things happen, they were around for a fair bit longer than that. They were, still had many years left to live. And so when Jesus appeared to his friends after he rose, remember Jesus was only around for sort of 40 days after he rose from the grave, and then he ascended to heaven. But in that time, he appeared to his friends, and he did something very important. He said, "Hey guys, I commission you to go and spread the good news about the coming of God's kingdom." He gave them a purpose. He gave them a mission. And he said, continue on with the work I've been doing in announcing the coming of heaven to earth. I want you to go and continue that. Now, what does it mean when we say that Jesus declared the good news of the coming of God's kingdom and said to his followers, go and declare this good news? What is the good news? Well, first of all, it means that there's some bad news we've got to recognize. In those days, there was the oppression of the violence of the Roman Empire, a horrific era to live in if you weren't on the side of the Romans. Today, there's similar but different challenges, there's threats of war, there's the volatile nature of things going on in the world, there's the housing crisis and rental prices, and what you name there's sickness, there's various forms of injustice, there's things going on which we go, this is not very nice, what we see around us. But all of that, I would suggest, is just actually symptoms of an underlying problem. They're not the problem itself, they're symptoms of something underneath. Underneath is a problem. It's like a disease that exists in all of humanity, and it's kind of a silent killer. Most of the time, we don't even recognize it's there, but it creates pain and it creates anxiety and sickness and stress and all sorts of issues. Most importantly, this disease is carried, unfortunately, from generation to generation. It has the effect of like cutting us off from our life source. And so we become like a branch that's been severed from the tree. There's still some life left, but it's not going to be green for long. This disease, this problem is called sin. And that's the bad news. We all know deep down that there's a recognition that something is off, something is wrong, something is not as it's meant to be. That's the problem. The good news is this, that there's a God, a personal being who created you and I. And he has a plan for making things right again, fixing the problem, restoring things back to how they were meant to be. He has a plan to re-establish our connection to the life source so that we would live again, and that the life source is God himself. And this plan started with Jesus, the Son of God, his birth, his life, his teachings, and ultimately his death and his resurrection. In fact, this plan is Jesus, because everything that Jesus did showed that God had entered into the human experience personally and paid the price for our sin. And so instead of God just sort of sitting up in heaven and going, oh my gosh, you guys have ruined things, but I'll provide some ways in which you can make it up to me. You can kind of do some stuff for you to try and reverse the problem. Instead, God did something else. God said, I'll fix the problem myself and create a whole new way for humanity to get reattached to the tree, reconnected to the source of life. And so the solution was that God created a new way to God. God in Jesus did that by defeating death and removing the power of sin. Sin separates us from God, disconnects us from our life source. It creates death. Jesus, however, experienced that for us, experienced that separation for us, died for us, so that the power of sin to cut us off from God was removed. And then he rose from the grave. And now by connecting ourselves to the risen Christ through faith in him, we come to life again. Right? So this is the good news. Sin has been defeated, death itself has been overcome, and this news needs to be spread because one needs to hear the invitation to turn to Jesus and receive his forgiveness and grace. So I say all this because this is what Jesus asked his friends to do after his resurrection. He said, here's this good news now, go and spread the good news. God's kingdom is a kingdom of love. God's kingdom is a kingdom of forgiveness and freedom from sin and death, and it's here through Jesus. You can be part of it through simple trust in Jesus. Go share, right? So this is what he said. Now, that all might sound great to you and fun. I know for the majority of you in the room, that is good news, and you've received that good news, and you celebrate. You're here because you celebrate that good news. But there's one small problem with this mission of his disciples to go out and share it. The problem is this: other kings don't like their kingdoms being invaded. Just look around the world right now, right? What are we seeing? Country to country. This is my land. This is my country. You're not welcome here. Around the world, kings, presidents, whatever they are, right? It's like one big fight for who can gain the most power. kingdoms and countries invading others, and who will emerge victorious? Will it be China? Will it be the USA? What's the tariffs going to do? There's this kind of tussle going on. But in the spiritual, there's a far more significant battle that's been going on for a long time. Because whilst the problem is sin, undoubtedly, the silent disease of sin has something, or rather someone behind it. A king trying to expand and establish his kingdom wherever he can. In the Bible, we're introduced to this king as the snake or the liar or the devil or the Satan. He gets the ball rolling with Adam and Eve when he convinces them not to trust God. In other words, disconnect. And all hell breaks loose from there, literally. See, maybe you grew up hearing, well, heaven and hell were places someone went when they died, depending on how good they were or whether they trusted God or didn't trust God. On the contrary, they are spiritual dominions of two lords, two kings, and these dominions exist all around us and will continue into eternity. C.S. Lewis, author of the Chronicles of Narnia, put it this way: there is no neutral ground in the universe. Every square inch, every split second is claimed by God and counterclaimed by Satan. And so Jesus, in establishing the kingdom of heaven on the earth, is invading another kingdom that's already well established here. The kingdom of darkness, right? The Bible calls the devil the king of this world. Now, why do I share all this? Well, because this is why Jesus says to his disciples, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. He's saying, if you're with me, you're going to be stepping on the toes of the dark and evil things of this world. Because I'm about light and love, and the other kingdom's not. You'll be pushing back against the one who has always been trying to steal life from men and women and disconnect them from their life source, the God who loves them. And so Jesus says, take heart. It will be tough, but you are blessed because you're in the winning team, right? You're fighting a battle that's already been won. You're fighting the fight of love and for life. And it's just that the cleanup operation hasn't quite finished yet, but the war's over. The victory has already been won. And Jesus goes on to say, rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. To know Jesus, to trust Jesus, is not a ticket to peace and prosperity in this life. Right? If that's what you're after, good luck to you. I hope you can find that, all the best. But trust in Jesus is far more than some happiness now. It's a guarantee of lasting joy and peace, even beyond this life. Maybe today you're bothered by hardships or you feel some level of resistance to being a person of faith and love. Faith in Jesus, love and mercy towards others. Maybe you feel that pushback. Friends, you are blessed. You're blessed because your full reward isn't here yet. Those who trust him will rise with him, and that's what we celebrate today. We're still in the middle of the story. Now, having said all that, as much as that is good news, having said all that, here's why I think this beatitude, the 8th of the 8 beatitudes, carries a message of good news for ordinary people in a unique and compelling way. When Jesus said, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Well, most ordinary, unspectacular people like you and I, let's be honest, most of us are pretty ordinary, unspectacular people. We're all normal human beings. Right? Most of us look at this and go, I don't know if I've got that kind of faith and commitment. Maybe you do. Maybe it's just me. But honestly, to face persecution and to and backlash and ridicule and still stay faithful, I don't know. Like, if that's what God's asking of me, if that's what's going to be expected, I'm sure I'm quite there sometimes. We have it easy here. We have freedom of religion, but it's not like this in other places. I was speaking to someone this week and who was talking to someone, having a conversation with someone from China, and they said, "Oh yeah, many of us know Christians who have just disappeared." Right? If we really faced persecution, this kind of pushback against our faith, would we hold on to our faith? I don't know about you, but even when someone asks me what I do for a living, often I kind of like mince my words and avoid saying something that might make the conversation awkward. I'm like, oh, I work at a church, right? It's like on my worst days, right? Sometimes it's like I don't want to step on toes. I don't want to have the resistance and the pushback. And so I look at this and think, I don't know. I honestly, I'm not sure that I could be this kind of blessed person, to be honest. I'm not always that faithful to Jesus. I lean towards comfort and status quo. And Jesus seems to be saying, you're blessed if you're bold and you continue my cause and you spread my message and you get slammed for invading the devil's kingdom. But see, I think there's something else Jesus is getting at here. Now, yes, there's absolutely encouragement and reassurance for those who do stay faithful and are persecuted and insulted and pushed back against. But here's something else we can only understand on this side of the cross and the resurrection. That there's really only one person who truly faced persecution because of righteousness, who was insulted, persecuted, and had all sorts of things falsely said about him because he invaded the kingdom of darkness with his kingdom of love and grace. There's only one. That's Jesus himself. We will never truly be righteous, truly faithful. You and I will always fall short. We keep wandering away from God, but Jesus lived the perfect life we could not live. And yet he hung on that cross while they hurled insults at him. He did it for us. He is the blessed one. Jesus is this person. Have you ever been falsely accused of something? You know, maybe you've had an experience in your life where you've been misunderstood or treated unfairly by others. Anyone had that? It's a terrible feeling, right? When you're treated unfairly in some way. I remember one time in school, a bunch of who I thought were my friends promised me something good, and it felt great, and I felt liked and appreciated. And then I found out they were playing a mean joke on me, and they wanted to just get a laugh out of making me feel embarrassed and confused. Now, maybe you've had that experience of being treated horribly, used by someone, being wronged, and you didn't deserve it. You were treated unfairly. Well, the simplest way I can explain the gospel, I think, is this. Jesus willingly went through the greatest level of unfair treatment for you and for me. Embarrassment, rejection, being taken advantage of, unfairly judged because he knew that you and I couldn't fix our own problem. Only his death could dismantle the power of sin. And so, as the prophet said, he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. But that's only half the story. A loving and gracious dead man is still just a dead man, right? Jesus claimed he would rise from the grave. He said this. He said, on the third day, the Son of Man will rise. And so, as C.S. Lewis said, Jesus was either a liar trying to lead everyone astray, or he was a lunatic who thought he was God, albeit a very loving lunatic who did some nice things for people, right? And if Jesus is still in the grave, then he's one of those two things. He's a liar or he's a lunatic, because he said, I will rise. But if he's alive, then the only other conclusion is that Jesus is indeed the Lord of all creation, ready and waiting to give us life as we put our trust in him. And so whether you're a long-term Christian or you're someone who feels like your faith fluctuates from day to day, or you're just checking us out online, exploring, or you're here going, I don't know what I think yet. Here's what Easter's really all about when it boils down to it. The God who created you loves you. The God who created you came and died for you out of a great desire for you to come back to him and find life in a relationship with him. The God who created you wants to bless you. So for those who have been following our Beatitudes series over the last 7-8 Sundays, here's what we've covered. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. And do you know what it all boils down to? Here's the main thing, the main point that it all boils down to. Jesus is the poor in spirit. Jesus is the one who mourns for you. Jesus is the meek. Jesus is the one who hungers and thirsts for righteousness. Jesus is the merciful one. Jesus is the pure in heart. Jesus is the peacemaker. And Jesus is the one who was persecuted because of righteousness. And therefore, here is the good news invitation for you and I. Come to Jesus and be blessed. That's it. Come to Jesus. You can't have a relationship with a dead man, but Jesus is alive. Amen? Jesus is alive. Come to him.